Hello and welcome to the Dragon Shed for the May edition of Scrollsaw Saga. If you watched last month's monthly report, I kind of gave away a lot of what this project is going to be. So I'll just recap, so if you didn't catch it then hopefully you're catching it now. So I've designed a game which is somewhere between Trivial Pursuit and a game that we used to have called Key to the Kingdom. Now the main part of Key to the Kingdom, other than it being kind of a fantasy style game, was that you had these wings that opened. So you landed on a particular square on the board and you could open the wing and move about the inside of it. So I've basically designed the same sort of idea. So you've got your maze on the outside and the maze on the inside. Now going with the Trivial Pursuit idea, each of these kind of quadrants has a question, has a subject, like Trivial Pursuit. Now the top layers are all going to be standard questions, so things like literature, science, geography, that kind of thing is your standard top questions. But then when you get to the inside ones, they're going to be more geeky stroke nerdy questions, so things like sci-fi TV or sitcoms or Monty Python or things like that. So if you're up on my Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, I'm requesting some question writers, and I'll put those out about the same time that this video comes out, so you'll see what I mean. So that is the basic board idea. Now I've played this through a couple of times with my dad and it seems to work in a logical way. I think the board itself is probably a little small in terms of kind of square size. I think for the prototype I'm going to stick with this, so that each square is 20mm. So I think for an actual playable board it might need to come up to 25 or 30mm square on each square. So, and the idea is again that this should be reducible, so you can pack it into a smallish box, so it's not going to take up masses of room with stuff. So that's the idea of having it in separate pieces. 3. Now you're probably looking at this video and asking yourself why, and I must admit that I did ask myself that a few times in the process. Essentially, because I want to. I've already made a nasty cardboard prototype, and I don't really want to upgrade to a slightly less nasty cardboard prototype. So I'd prefer to have a copy that a game that is pretty and interesting. Even if it doesn't get taken up as a successful game by this company I'm talking to, I still want a good quality version that I can keep for myself. So, I'm not going to say what these pieces are. I hope that you'll be able to work it out as I go along. If not, it will become clear anyway. So, apologies for the noise in the background. First of all, I cut up a whole load of popsicle sticks. This is in the region of about 300 individual pieces, and I just used a pair of scissors to cut them, which is probably a bad idea because I ended up having a inflamed thumb and I lost the sensation in the tip of my thumb for a couple of days after that. So yeah, future reference, don't cut 300 odd popsicle sticks with a pair of scissors. I probably should have used the scroll saw, but I'm not entirely sure that would have cut as cleanly as I wanted. These sticks are various sizes, going from about 10 centimetres down to 3. I couldn't get any smaller than that. I'm going to need some that are 2 centimetres long, but cutting 2 centimetres on a popsicle stick just causes it to kind of shatter and splinter, so those ones I'm going to use card for, and I'm not going to do them till the end, till I know exactly how many I'm going to need. Because I worked out how many I would need for 1/4 of the board, and then multiplied that by 4 and added about 5 or 10% just to give a bit of leeway so I don't have the same pattern on each piece, and you'll see why later on. So I initially started sanding by hand, and beyond doing the board pieces like that, I wasn't really keen on doing the individual sticks, so switched back to the machine, which is all well and good, but some of these I've done double layers of popsicle stick, or I've got plywood for larger pieces as well, and trying to kind of bevel a popsicle stick that's only about 1 centimetre wide is interesting. I'm quite glad I hadn't trimmed my nails, because I managed to do that pretty much on the sander. So yeah, probably not the best way of doing it, but never mind. So to cover these, I'm starting just with some plain copier paper and some tissue paper. Now I could have just gone straight on with the tissue paper, but I wanted to have a little bit of strength and to hold a particular shape. So I've cut these pieces of paper to the right height for the sticks, and then about an inch, about 25mm for the to wrap around. Obviously the wider ones are about 4 centimetres, about 40mm. So I'm just sticking these onto tissue paper with just some cheap PVA. Don't need the particularly strong stuff for this, so it's not quite paper mache, it's more decoupage, but we'll get to that. Some of these I've double layered, so I did them first on tissue and then cut them out and then did them again on tissue, so that they'd have a slightly different shade. It's not very obvious, but it just gives it a slightly deeper colour. So I've got more variation. So I'm starting with 7 shades of tissue paper, and that gives me kind of 14 or thereabouts. So then I move on to the slightly tedious task of wrapping these sticks. Now I start by just trimming down the sides of my pieces of paper, because I don't really need the excess around the sides, and then just gluing over the top and bottom just to give it a very neat edge, so that if that part is visible you don't see any white, you only see colour. And then more glue again to just wrap them around the sticks. For the longer ones, there was a little bit of difficulty trying to get them to stick down, because you couldn't get kind of even pressure all the way down, but it worked out alright in the end. And then once I've got all these done, I then kind of resort them by colour, and then divide the colours up into about 4 piles. Now each of these is going to get a slightly different treatment with paint. So I've got some metallic acrylics and some brown and black, so I can kind of weather down slightly and then kind of raise up with metallic as well, to give these kind of a leather appearance. And then we move on to the board, which is kind of the same thing. It's kind of decoupage paper mache style, just using book pages. So it's tedious, but it's a necessary part of this production, so I'll carry on with that and I'll come back to you for the... Just crank that in. There's a bit of movement on this side. So I think I might as well pull that off before it comes off, so I can just stick it back on again. I've got to do some touch up with the paint anyway. So what I'm using for a hinge is just a strip of leather. I was tempted to do laminated paper, but I want something that's going to stand being bent and unbent and bent and unbent a lot of times, so leather I think is going to be the better option for this. So I'm using my stronger glue instead of the PVA, because again I want this to be quite sturdy. And although there is a temptation to glue the blocks, I'm only going to glue on the board, so that there is kind of freer movement in the leather. So I'm probably using a little too much glue, but the leather will soak it up. So quite a bit there. Yeah, a bit too much. We shall see. So I'm lining up a square end with the inside edge. I'm going to put a couple of pins in just to hold the leather, because essentially the leather and the glue will be enough, but just for kind of some security at least over time I'm going to go with some pins. So I'm going to turn this round and place this edge against the edge of my table, which should make it more solid and stable. So I'm going to pilot a hole as close to the middle of the board as I can get. And I've only got a few of these escutcheon pins. They're only about 4 or 5 mil long, and I'm using those for the top layer. They don't seem to split the ply any, and I've got some standard 10 mil pins for the bottom, which has a tendency to split the wood. So ones at the top are going to be visible, or going to be more visible at least. So I'll use the little ones for the top for a better presentation, and I can cover up the bottom when I put the foam on the bottom of the board. So generally this build has been simpler. even though I expected a lot of issues, I haven't had any, which is a surprise, and quite a refreshing surprise. Ooh, she says. Now putting the other pins is going to be a little interesting, because I'm just balancing on this key. So yeah, as I said, this project has not been as challenging as I expected. I think I managed to plan it out quite well in advance, so I kind of knew where I was heading with things and where the problems would come. Now, this game doesn't really have a name yet. I've got a couple kind of floating around, but none that I've really settled on. So for the minute I'm going with Geek Chase, but I'm not entirely sure that's really where it's going to end up. So. And hopefully you figured out that all these pieces of popsicle stick are supposed to be books. And this is supposed to look somewhat like library shelves. Albeit library shelves organised by a maniac, but